When the Titanic slipped into the water for the first time, it wasn't just a ship, it was a 46,000-ton statement that humanity had finally conquered the ocean, yet it didn't even survive its first week. It's the ultimate irony. The ship famous for being unsinkable became the most famous shipwreck in history.
It's the classic story of pride before the fall, right? But I've always wondered, was it actually labeled unsinkable by the builders, or did we just make that up later to make the movie more dramatic?
It was a bit of both. The trade journals of the time called it practically unsinkable because of its advanced safety features. Today, we're looking at how that confidence led to one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters ever. This isn't just about an iceberg, it's about a series of choices that sealed the fate of 1,500 people.
So let's go back to the beginning. Who actually thought this monster of a ship was a good idea?
That would be the White Star Line, a British shipping company. In the early 1900s, they weren't trying to build the fastest ships. They wanted the biggest and the most luxurious. They commissioned 3 Olympic-class liners, and the Titanic was the middle child, built in the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast.
Belfast? I always forget it was built there. It must have been a massive undertaking for the city.
It was the largest man-made moving object on Earth at the time. Thomas Andrews Jr., the chief naval architect, oversaw every detail. He was a perfectionist who actually traveled on the maiden voyage to take notes on how to improve the ship. Unfortunately, he never got to write that final report.
And who was the face of the operation? Because every ship needs a captain who knows what they're doing.
That was Captain Edward John Smith. He was the most experienced captain in the White Star Fleet, often called the millionaire's captain because the wealthy elite trusted him so much. He planned for the Titanic's maiden voyage from Southampton to New York to be his final trip before retirement.
Talk about a bad retirement plan. But what made this ship so supposedly high-tech for 1912?
It had 16 watertight compartments with doors that could be closed remotely from the bridge. The idea was that the ship could stay afloat even if the first 4 compartments flooded. It also featured the pinnacle of luxury: a swimming pool, a gymnasium, a Turkish bath, and even a high-powered radio telegraph for passengers to send personal messages home.
Okay, so it's basically a floating palace, but we know the ending. How did they get it so wrong?
It started on April 10th, 1912. The ship departed Southampton with about 2,224 people on board. You had the world's richest people in first class, like John Jacob Astor IV, and hundreds of poor emigrants in third class, all hoping for a new life in America.
It's a microcosm of the whole world on one boat. When did things start to go south?
On the night of April 14th, the sea was freakishly calm, like a mirror. This was actually a problem because waves weren't breaking against icebergs, making them harder to see. Around 11:40 p.m., the lookout spotted an iceberg directly ahead. He rang the bell 3 times and called the bridge.
Did they try to turn or did they just ram it?
First Officer William Murdoch ordered the ship to turn hard to starboard and reverse the engines, but the Titanic was too large and moving too fast. Instead of a head-on collision, the iceberg scraped along the side, punching holes in 5 of the watertight compartments.
Wait, you said the ship could survive 4 compartments flooding, right?
Exactly. 5 was the magic number for disaster. As the bow started to sink, the water simply spilled over the tops of the bulkheads into the next compartments, like an ice cube tray filling up.
This is where the lifeboat situation comes in, isn't it? I've heard they didn't have nearly enough.
This is the part that still shocks people. The Titanic had 20 lifeboats. That was only enough for about half the people on board. But here's the kicker. They were actually carrying more boats than the law required at the time. The British Board of Trade's regulations were decades out of date.
So they weren't breaking the law, they were just arrogant.
They thought the ship was the lifeboat. They believed that in an emergency, the ship would stay afloat long enough to ferry people to another vessel. When the order came to load the boats, the crew followed a women and children first protocol, but there was total confusion. Many boats left half empty.
Half empty, while people were literally standing on a sinking ship.
It's tragic. One boat with a capacity of 65 people left with only 28. Meanwhile, the band famously played on the deck to keep people calm, and Captain Smith and Thomas Andrews both chose to go down with the ship. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic snapped in two and disappeared into the freezing Atlantic.
1,500 people dead in the middle of the ocean. It's hard to wrap your head around that. What happened to the people who survived?
The RMS Carpathia arrived about 2 hours later to pick up the 710 survivors. The world was in shock. When the news hit New York and London, it sparked immediate investigations. People couldn't believe their perfect ship had failed so spectacularly.
Did anything actually change, or did we just move on to the next big tragedy?
It changed everything. The disaster led to the first International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, or SOLAS. They mandated that every ship must have enough lifeboats for everyone on board, and they established the International Ice Patrol to monitor icebergs.
It's a heavy legacy. We basically had to lose 1,500 lives just to get basic safety rules in place. Does the Titanic still sit there on the ocean floor?
It does. It wasn't even discovered until 1985. Now it's slowly being consumed by metal eating bacteria. It's a race against time to study it before it completely collapses into the sand.
Every time I hear this story, it feels like a warning. If you had to boil this whole tragedy down, what's the one thing we should remember about the Titanic?
The Titanic reminds us that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, it can never fully account for human error and the overwhelming power of the natural world.
That's Carpathia level deep. Thanks, Alex. That's Wikipodia. Every story on demand. Search your next topic at wikipodia.ai.